The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. On that split screen over there somewhere is Christopher K. Shortell. Chris, the budget's been out not that long, maybe a couple of weeks, something like that. And I know that the council hasn't had budget workshops and not everyone is fine-tooth combed, the budget. But I do want to get your thoughts on it. But first, I want to lay just a little bit of groundwork on it. The mayor proposes to increase the mill rate or the mills by 0.31 mill increase, which is a 1.06% increase. A memo from the comptroller's office says that the average household the average residential home will pay an extra $57 in taxes. And that increase of 0.31 mils should raise about $1.3 million, according to my calculations. There's a couple of different probably perspectives on this. One, tax freeze. Another, hey, it's a small tax increase and prices go up. So you just got to keep up with things. So I want to get your perspective on this. Could Christopher K. Shortell live with a 1.06% tax increase?
Yes, I could live with it. As you know from my 4 previous budgets, I am not one of the zero tax increase people. I could live with it, but I also am open to, if there's a path to zero, and it has to be a very specific path for me, and we can get into this, I'd be open to that as well, or a path to less. But I think zero is we'll get into this more. I think zero is largely symbolic. And as you pointed out, it is a minimal tax increase as it stands proposed today.
Well, I agree with you that it is. Symbolic, but we know what we're going to hear, and some of it's appeared on social media. So I just want to theatrically reinforce that and see if I can back you down a little bit.
Okay.
They say the rainy day fund has been labeled the rainy day fund. You can't rain any harder than this. More people are out of work than ever. They've been laid off, salaries cut. If there was ever a time for a little bit of tax relief, even $58, that would be appreciated. And it's not that hard to do. Why don't you just give the taxpayers of Wallingford a little sympathy and say, okay, this year we can do it. What's the matter with that approach?
There's nothing the matter with it. I think that you have to remember the town's budgeting philosophy in both the taxes and the way the utilities is I'm going to use a COVID analogy. It's to flatten the curve. That's what the town does. So you always get, the little increase in the hopes that you avoid the big one. So when you talk about the rainy day, you could make an argument that you're making, or that social people might make. You could also argue that this would not be the time to raid that fund because the day could get a lot rainier a year from now. We don't know. We are still 2 months into this crisis, and you go online. There are colleges closing college this coming fall. We don't know when we're coming out of this crisis. So I think you have to take into account the long view, not just this budget year, but next budget year and their tax bill next year. So I think, again, I didn't say no. I'm open to it, but I'm not just going to rush into it because of this crisis, because I think you could make the counter argument.
Well, I'm going to call it a trap. One of the traps that the council falls into, not everyone on the council, but those that want to have a zero tax increase, one of the traps is trying to find where specific cuts are going to be made. And so they fine tooth comb the budget and they agonize and they debate and they tie themselves in their knots, trying to figure out how many dollars is going to be cut from what department. And I think it betrays a little bit of confusion in that cutting the budget doesn't necessarily mean cutting expenses. They are different concepts. So you could cut the budget a little bit and that would have an impact on the mill rate, but expenses aren't necessarily going to go down because you cut the budget. I mean, it depends upon how much you cut the budget. So if there's ever a time for a convenient, easy to do tax freeze, it would be freeze the mill rate and take additional sums from the fund balance. I mean, the mayor loves to take money from the fund balance. I mean,
And you said 1.3 is 1.3 million the number that you calculated?
yeah, that's a target.
Sure. What if we said we're going to reduce the Board of Ed increase by 600,000 and take 700,000 from the surplus? So I mean, that's another way. I'm just throwing that out there. That's another way to do it. That's just as quick and easy as the way you're proposing. What are your thoughts?
I could live with that. Frankly, I don't think it's a big deal, that big a deal this year. You take it all from the surplus. Two choices here. Take it all from the surplus, and the mayor, keeps his eye on spending like he claims he always does, and you don't spend it all because you never do. Or, cut the Board of Ed a little bit. Frankly, I think politically it's a lot easier. Take it all from the surplus.
Well, here it is. And that's
Just
look,
take it all from the surplus.
That right here is one of the reasons why you get all these divided votes on the budget. At least my limited time on the council, it is the two sacred. There's a lot of sacred cows. You talk about the police and the fire, the surplus and the Board of Ed are the two biggest sacred cows in the budget. There are counselors who will not. They will go up talking about certain counselors. They will not touch a hair on the chin of the Board of Ed budget.
All right.
And there are other counselors who will not touch a hair on the chin of the surplus, and therein lies the rub. And that's why I'm saying let's annoy everybody. Let's make everybody hurt a little bit, and let's look at all of it. That's all I'm saying.
All right, so I got a couple of short videos I want to pop up, and these are images basically that I narrated. So they're short videos. The first one gives a little bit of history of surpluses and deficits of the town of Wallingford. It adds some context, so let's watch that first. So we've got a little background, a little historical background as to how many times Wallingford has run a surplus and how many times it's run a deficit. You can see the red print represents deficits, the black represents surplus. The last 3 years, from 2017 through 2019, the town has run a deficit in the aggregate. Those last 3 years is about $3,109,000. That's the amount that the general fund has dropped because of those deficits. We don't know what's going to happen in year 2020, but this should be an eye-opener for those who think that the town consistently runs surpluses. The town absolutely does not. There you go. I had a brief conversation with Councillor Vin Testa this afternoon, and I asked him if he could live with a tax freeze, would be in favor of a tax freeze, just what his approach was. And here's what he had to say.
Well, I think right now we have to seriously consider finding a way to zero out the new budget, so that there is no tax increase. We have no idea where we're going to be in 6 months to 12 months with the economy. And right now, people are very nervous about being able to maintain their current expenses. And I've agreed over the past number of years that a slight increase in taxes is reasonable, given the fact that our expenses go up every year. I've done what I can to try to limit that in proposals I've made. And I also understand the need to maintain a responsible balance in our fund balance for our credit rating and for our emergencies. But, at the risk of sounding cliche, this is a rainy day fund, people like to say, and I can't imagine a rainier day. I understand it is dangerous to try to use reserves for operating expenses. But we do have a good number of a good amount of reserves in the bank right now. So my objective as we go into the budget process will be to try to, I think we both agree that there's a number about 1.3 million that we might have to try to find to zero out the tax increase through a combination of expense reduction and revenue increase. So what I'm going to pursue would be attempting to find reductions in expenses, and that would offset some of that. But it's very likely that we might have to increase the amount from the fund balance that we're adding to the revenue side by $1.3 million. If that's absolutely necessary to affect a 0% tax increase, then I'm willing to support that and propose it.
What do you think of Vin Testa? He says he could live with a tax freeze. He would go there. He would get into the reserve fund, get an additional 1.3 million if he had to, if he couldn't find another path.
In my experience, Counselor Testa is a very pragmatic counselor.
Yeah.
But what I heard him say was that he would be looking at all options.
Oh, sure.
And at the end result, he'd be open to the Brzezinski plan of just raiding the surplus. But I think
that's.
But yeah, I think he's open to it. But again, when I think about the composition of the council, at least this is my 5th budget. Yeah, he's been one of those guys that I think he's not necessarily a zero tax increase person in the past. He'll go either, like he said. So I think all of us. You see, here's the thing. I think we're all open. I don't want to say we're all open, but I think with a budget this size, 1.3 million is not a lot of money. It's not, and so it's very tempting for all of us coming at it from different. For me, looking at the Board of Ed rolling in money, I mean, man, for you looking at the surplus, and so I mean, I think we're all kind of like circling the carcass a little bit, like,
all right,
that's a bad analogy, but I mean, I think it's going to be tempting for us to do something. We'll see if again, do we fall prey to the sacred cows? That's where the stuff always breaks down. If there is a motion about taking it all from the surplus and we've exhausted the other options, would I vote for it? Or would Vin Testa vote for a motion that would take half of it from the Board of Ed's huge increase and half from the surplus? So that's where you get into the details. That's where these things always fall apart. So your thoughts?
My thoughts are get together and caucus beforehand, shorten these budget hearings. They're sort of painful to do it by remote.
No kidding.
Agree in advance to take that 1.3 million from the reserve, freeze taxes, hang together and let the mayor squirm. And if the mayor says, oh, we can't afford to do that, just remind the mayor gently that he's the guy that controls the purse strings and he can scale back spending.
So can Sal Menzo.
Well, of course.
They're getting almost $7 million.
And the council doesn't have to roll over to the Board of Ed its surplus like you do every year.
Now you're back to that. Yeah. We can right that wrong. You can right that wrong. So I want to change the subject on it, but staying with the budget. I think there's an area of interest that you have based on our off-camera conversations about the amount of money, this is my word, that is stuck in the capital non-recurring fund. Yeah.
I think at the end of 2019, there was like 6 to 7 million that was there. Sure, for every dollar in the capital non-recurring fund, there's a label attached to it like finish project A, finish project B, waiting on project C, and you add all these up and it's a ton of money. Yeah. What's your approach on that?
I think that's something, and I want to be, Craig Fishbein looked at that a few years ago as well, and
well, he's not the only one.
He's not the only one.
It's Craig Fishbein.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's always somebody's turn to look at it. It's my turn this year to look at it, I guess. My approach was I went through we get a monthly report, a budget report. Expenditures, or actual expenditures. It's 100 pages and it's a lot of great information. It's mandated by the charter that we get it. So I went through it. So the cap and non is in all of those things. All those projects are in there. So I went through and listed them out. and tried to, add up every available dollar I could find that was not spent and not encumbered.
What you come up with?
Well, I didn't think you were going to ask me that, so I don't have my spreadsheet. It was millions. I mean, it was millions.
Yeah.
It was like $4 or $5 million. I mean, it was a lot.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, I emailed the comptroller, and
Yeah.
I said, because all the counselors are emailing, not just me, we're all emailing questions. And I said, here's a list. And, a lot of it probably is going to involve Rob Baltramitis. And, tell me why the townwide paving program from 2016 is still showing money that's not spent.
Let me stop you there. Do you have any initial thoughts on what to do about that? Because you have put some time into it, and I just wonder if you had a reaction. It's human to have a reaction.
My reaction
Yeah.
on the townwide paving, I did talk to Rob quickly. And Rob said what happens a lot is that they have a list of streets they're going to pave every year. So they're going to pave Ward Street, but the gas company comes in and rips up Ward Street, so they can't pave Ward Street. They don't spend the money. They keep it on the books because they're going to do it next year. Understood. Apparently, though, for whatever, maybe some of these streets get ripped up every year. I don't know, but you look at the paving program, it goes back to 16 and 15. So what I would suggest is pick a year like this year. Don't pave. I realize there is a physical limit to how many streets you can pave in a year. You only have so many trucks, people, good weather days. I understand there's a limit. Why don't you scale back save $500,000? They usually put $1 million in that. Scale it back for a year and get caught up on all these streets that are out there. And that takes care of part of the problem. There's other projects in this cap and non beyond the paving is a piece of it. It's not the only thing. My other solution is that we need to find out, I want information line by line. Why there's a project in there from 2010. I mean, 2010, it doesn't make any sense. And there's one in there with 14 cents available. Well, you know what? Get the 14 cents out of the account. To me, we got to clean that up and put it towards something.
Let me run this by you. Could it be that the town council and just the way the government is set up is pumping more money into the cap and non-recurring fund that it could possibly spend? Because this is an ongoing problem. We can't blame it on Ward Street. It's been this way for a long, long time. Right. And either some of that cap and non money that originates from the electric division, it touches the general fund, but then it goes into the capital and non-recurring account, which is for big major projects, usually involving the improvement of land. So maybe that money is got to rethink that money or hire more subcontractors, and get the work done rather than having $7 million sitting in account, waiting for things to break right.
Right. And let me be clear. I'm not. I'm willing to let if there's stuff from 2019 in there, that's fine. I'm not gonna. I just think the farther back you go, the less patient I am or understanding I am as to why is it sitting there. 2019. Maybe 2018. Okay, there's some projects you're waiting on, but I mean, come on. Move that money out. Put it somewhere.
You mentioned put it somewhere.
Yeah.
How about community pool?
Cool.
And that's going to be a segue for me because there's another thing I want to mention about it. But how about that?
That would defray the cost. Well, that would go a long way.
All right.
I would do.
Well, let's get to community pool now, because there's been a recent development on the community pool. We went into the cost of that at some length last time we did a show.
Yep.
But since that time, the mayor has come up with a letter to the council. I want your interpretation of it. But the letter listed various costs of the pool based on the bids. And the mayor seemed to be urging the council to not go along with it. He seemed to be urging the council, this is too much money. We got to find a way of scaling back some of the features. Your thoughts on my interpretation?
Yeah, he flat out said that. I think the mayor what was interesting was this was the first time in my knowledge that you saw in writing the $6 million budget that we've been talking about for a while, that I've been comfortable with, actually, and I've defended it on this show. But we've never, as you've pointed out, it's kind of a phantom budget. No one voted on it. No one agreed to it. It was a number, this was the first time I think you saw the number in writing. And and so I think we are being encouraged to scale back, and there are two elements in there that we talked about this last show. The sand volleyball court that the architect said would be $15,000, and it's $60,000. That's crazy. And the playground, I think that those two elements I would be willing to look at cutting, even without the mayor asking us to cut. The other stuff I would not. To me, I don't want to jump ahead, but I mean, to me, you're gonna bond this. The difference between 6.6 million and 6.8 or whatever it would come out to be in the final analysis, is that over 20 years with low bond rates, is that going to break the bank? I don't think so. But I think the mayor, we're back to that $6 million number. I think that's the root of the memo, why he's encouraging us to.
Is the pressure on you first, and the pressure on you, and then how do you read the pressure on the other counselors? Is there pressure on you, and do you think there's pressure on the other counselors to reduce the cost of the pool by eliminating features? Some features some counselors may want and others don't care about, and vice versa. And it seems to me the practical solution is everyone sort of compromise and cut each other a little slack and go for the whole package. Rather than having this debate as to whether or not you eliminate the playground, for example.
In the conversations I've had with many other counselors, I don't sense any pressure, frankly. What I sense are what you just said. I think the counselors I've talked to, we all, a lot of us talk a lot offline, because a lot of us are just friends. I just sense that we all have strong feelings about these things. There may be strong feelings, and they run, I think, the whole spectrum. I think there might be a strong feeling of why should the town pay for a pool? Period.
Well,
versus why shouldn't we get an a la carte? We should be getting an a la carte. We should be getting a bigger lap lane, 6 lap lanes. We should be getting a 10,000 square foot pool. Versus me saying, I can live with the pool. I don't want the playground, because every playground I drive by, not just with COVID, they're always empty in town. So I think there's a lot of those types of thoughts. And I think to your point, it would be nice if we could all come to some kind of agreement, one way or the other, on, okay, what can we live with? Because what I don't want is, I don't want the pool to die a death of 1,000 cuts, where there aren't 5 people who can agree on anything with the pool, and therefore there aren't 5 people who are going to vote yes. So I really, while I am nervous about the size of the pool, and I may be, I know others are nervous about the lap lane size, which I may push for that. At the end of the day, I don't want to kill it over these things either. So, I agree with you. I think we should all come up with something we can live with. And if that's the full package, that's the full package. I don't know.
Yeah. One of the objections a strong objection I had to the mayor's letter, is that he included in his list of costs $580,000, I'm rounding a bit, for something called contingency. And a contingency is not a cost, yet the mayor includes it in the list of costs. And the mayor seems to be encouraging the councilors to cut a lot of money, and the mayor has built up the cost of this to $7.4 million. He said, isn't that really expensive? Wow, we got to bring it down. And the press may grab a hold of $7 million. No, that's the estimated cost. And the tax hawks may grab a hold of $7.4 million and say, well, that's way too much. But $580,000 of that is not cost. It is a contingency in case there are change orders. And there shouldn't be any change orders. Yet the mayor, I think, is being a little sleight of hand by throwing this in and allowing an unsuspecting public and commentators and press to say, oh, well, no, that's a cost. 580 is a cost, when it never should be.
Well,
that's my
right
there.
I don't understand. It's a bid. Why wouldn't the contract cover all this? And if I guess I'm trying to play through scenarios. If in the middle of I'm just going to make stuff up. The middle of construction, a microburst goes through there, and throws a bunch of trees and stuff in the hole. and they got to redig the hole, and it delays the project. And now, let's say the microburst delays it enough that some other supplies cost more than they would have cost. I mean, I don't know. Is the contract going to cover that, or is that a contingency? I have no idea. What if they dig and they find an Indian burial ground that no one knew was there? Again, the hole's already dug because there's been a pool there for 50 years. I'm just, this is something, as I understand, they build this contingency into every project, and they have a history of projects that seem to go over for various reasons. And I'm just a little baffled by that from a contractual point of view. Why wouldn't you have a good contract that manages the unknown? But
Yeah.
As much as you can manage the unknown, you can't manage all of it. Understood. I don't know. I would not consider that part of the fixed cost. It's a possibility, but
Well, we'll see how the council handles that. There may be a couple of councilors that say, no, contingency is a real cost, even though it may and should never be spent. Okay, let's call it quits. We've had a pretty substantive show. Probably be back in a couple of weeks for another one. We'll put this up on YouTube as we usually do. I put a couple of notices on various pages on Facebook with a link to the show. Sometimes I put up the whole show. So that's how folks can get to it. A little notice goes in the Record Journal. We appreciate that. But thanks to our viewers for watching the Citizen Mike Show. Pick us up on YouTube or on WPAA. Susan Huizenga is going to put this in our usual slot, 9 o'clock on Thursdays, Fridays, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. So as always, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Good night, Chris. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.